articulators to move the Kuku. The students sacrificed their school, and that is history now. You know, everybody had a passion for making Ghana what it had lost in the past. And I've never seen such dynamism. And that dynamism only happened because the leadership was trusted, and everybody believed that Jerry had a purpose. God gave him purpose, and all of us had to join.
To drive it.
Thank you.
Right. Mr. Egan,
yes.
Before you go, Jerry Rawlings will be buried tomorrow. Whatever values he stood for will be with us. How should we encourage the youth, and how can we encourage the youth to accept this and know that this is the way that can help building this country?
To take off from where Ambassador Kwesi Aboy just ended, about how an idea that was brought to him received good attention, and because of who he is, helped to organize a massive activity like evacuating cocoa and this, which was vital. I would say that and then I earlier on mentioned how it was that for as long as you made a contribution, he encouraged you and let you develop. I said he built many a leader. So, and it all stemmed from his passion to see Ghana develop and take its place among the Community of Nations. And that this would not happen without people being committed and pursuing a common objective. Everything he did was about placing Ghana where it belongs. And so to the youth, I would say, take from him the idea that when you are selfless and would allow other people to make their due contribution, that's when Ghana would really move in leaps and bounds. Because it's not only one person who can do it. You know, if you allow me, I must slip into my lecturing days as well. You know, one of the things that is still quite missing in our understanding of how nations run is that there has to be a symbiotic relationship between all those who are in leadership and who work to the purpose of one common good, that no one person can do it. He said it, no one person can do it. You have to have different people making their different contributions, but of course, with the objective of a common good that is common to all, not a common good that advantages others to the disadvantage of others. No, I think I can leave it there. And may he rest in perfect peace. When I heard about his death, I was shattered because I said, no, this man has so much more to offer, not only to Ghana, but to Africa. We didn't, in a way, you asked me about foreign policy, but to cap it, Rawlings did not belong only to Ghana. You know, very much like Nkrumah, you know.
Was a reason I asked the question.
Yeah, yes. Very much like Kwame Nkrumah. He's next to what, you know, Africans can consider their leaders. You know, Nkrumah has his place. But next to him, if you traveled, as we had the advantage of doing, every country in Africa, you know, knew about Rawlings and wanted a person like Rawlings to be their leader. You know, so
that is final, Kwesi. Was Rawlings at any point in time convinced that he has been successful?
He did believe that he had been successful, but he also recognized that he still had a long way to go. and that Ghana had a long way to go. Now that he's gone, we are yet to see how his legacy will be carried on by the current generation and the future generation. Question you asked about the youth, let them be inquisitive, let them challenge the time. Rawlings was a challenger. He didn't take yes for an answer. He wanted to go beyond the answer to find out more. That's what our kids don't do anymore.
And that is where...
And that's what is missing.
That is missing. That is what... Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ambassador...
If I use the word enigma for this man, he was an enigma. Right?
Sure.
Check it out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having the two of you in the studio. It's a pleasure.
Right, brother.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So, Ambassador Edith Hazel, okay? And then, Ambassador Sylvanus Tamaklo. Is it Tamaklo?
Yes.
Yes, okay. They'll give us a second outing. Welcome back to the Accra International Conference Center, day 3 of the final funeral, right, for former President Jerry John Rawlings. We have a series of interviews going through in our studio, and I have 2 people with me in the studio. I have Ambassador Edith Hazel, High Commissioner to Denmark, but closer, if you say High Commissioner to Denmark, you may not link it as quickly as possible. But then she was the Deputy General Secretary of the 31st December Women's Movement for 15 years. So it means that she worked with Nana Agyapong Rawlings and worked with the women in, there's those times when you talk about 31st December Women's Movement, we're looking at the Gary processing, we're looking at palm oil, we look at getting the women to get the economy running, encouraging women economy. Ambassador Hazel, looking at the pictures, we are looking at the mortal remains of former President Jerry John Rawlings. Though you did not work with him directly, but working with Nana Agyapong Rawlings and working with 31st December Movement, it looks as if you crushed him and you know the values he stood for. How did those values that Rawlings stood for shape your life?
Well, to start with, I'm broken. I'm very broken. And I just don't know what to say now. But he was a very hard-working person and was committed to whatever he undertook. Very committed, very passionate. And we had the opportunity to be encountering him a lot of times, because we were working with Konedu. And he was staying at the castle, and Konedu was at the rich residence. And so from our office, which was also, that is 31st December Women's Movement office, which was also located at Ridge. From there, the next place is Konedu's house. And we used to encounter the former president. He would have discussions, and he cared about the people, because with some of the decisions that he had even taken, he would just bounce those things off us and ask us, for the feedback. What would the people say? What are they saying? He was concerned, so it wasn't just a populist thing, that he was doing. He was concerned about the Ghanaian people. Actually, I would even want to go back, because when during June 4th, I happened to be in the university, and we were pushing and encouraging him, so we had come a long way before 31st December Women's Movement and 31st December Revolution, yeah. And then the establishment of the 31st December Women's Movement that I happened to be Deputy General Secretary of. So back to how he was doing things, it looks like people didn't understand him, they didn't understand him. But he was so passionate. When he takes up something, he wants to handle it and get to the bottom of it. He wants to have some results, So that's how I've known him. And as a family person, I don't know, but we saw him as an endearing husband. Because anytime we were with Konedu and he would come over, the way he treats the woman, in our presence at least, we were all very jealous. We wish that, we had men who would treat us, yes, give us the respect and, endearing to the wife, yes. And also the children, anytime he was in the house, you could see the rapport between himself and the children, although he was staying at the castle. And he didn't encourage his children to be extravagant, because I remember, an incident. I was with Nedu, we were on a trip to the Western region, and one of the children, that is Amina, wanted to have chocolate. There was chocolate in the fridge, but she had to call the mother in the Western region, on a tour of Western region, to ask permission to take the chocolate from the fridge. And for me, it was something else. It told me volumes.
That is it. Right. Ambassador Sylvanus Tamaklo, how did Rawlings attract your attention?
Our relationship goes way back. Family and a great friend. We believed in the same ideologies. We work together to achieve those ideologies.
We work together to achieve those ideologies. Now, probity, accountability, integrity, social justice. These are words that he doesn't joke with. And he made sure that he defended them at any point in time. Right. He said, this is the only way that the country can get home if we lived and respected them. Did we live and respected them?
Yes, largely, I think we lived and respected them. But of late, that has gone away. And he still was very passionate about those things till he's dead. Very passionate.
But he never stopped talking about corruption. So if we lived and we practiced them, at a point in time, he would have stopped talking about corruption. But he was passionate. He talked about corruption.
Yeah, he was very passionate. And I think
corruption. And he kept talking about corruption.
He kept talking about corruption.
From all that time to this time. You see. So it means that sometimes he's worried because after the revolution, thinking that people did not learn.
Yeah,
did he demonstrate that he was worried?
He demonstrated he was worried.
That people, the revolution did not move the Ghanaian to the extent that he would love to see the Ghanaian moved with the revolution.
Can you imagine what would have happened by now without the revolution? Corruption would have been very, very high, getting out of place, and with its attendant problems, civil disorder and the rest. So let's give Rawlings his due. With the revolution, it kept corruption to an extent.
Sure.
It's just like people saying without the churches and the mosques, what would have happened to society? People would have been taking their laws into their own hands, doing all kinds of things. So I think the revolution has its place in history. It stopped most of the things. It kept corruption to an extent. But corruption is rearing its head again. Jerry is gone. We need another person to educate society about what corruption is.
But as a friend and as a family member, was he at any point in time disappointed? Or did he demonstrate clearly that I am happy, that I did all the sacrifices for Ghana?
Yes, he was disappointed in some things. And there was one thing I always made sure I spoke to him about. Each time somebody went to lie to him about what people were saying, I made sure I reached out to him to give him the true picture of what was happening. The last one was about former Minister of Communications, Felix Kwachiofosu. And people had gone to tell Rawlings all kinds of things. So I got to him, I sat with him, with some friends of mine from Lima. And I said, no, Felix didn't say this. He said, am I sure? I said, yes. I can get Felix to come over to you. He didn't say this. And that was one thing I always made sure I helped him with most of the time, because we realized that people always went to him to tell him stories that were not true. And I always made sure I put those things right whenever I heard it.
Whenever you heard them. Now the man is lying in front of us. Tomorrow, by this time, will be counting the hours, and he will be getting ready to put his remains to rest at the cemetery. Right. His family. Edith, Hazel, his family. Your boss, Nana Agyapong Rawlings. How would you encourage her? Because as you said, he would come in and tease her. So it was a beautiful marriage. And if you listen to him talking about Nana, it's a beautiful marriage. Now, his departure, how would you encourage Nana?
Very difficult. I think it should be very, very difficult for her. And as I filed past, and I set eyes on Nana Konedu, Kimathi, Zaneto, Amina, that was when I broke down, because I knew them as kids growing up, and the man was very strong in their lives, and now he's no more. And it's going to be very difficult for Nana Konedu. But now she has all these children around, beautiful children around her. So she should take heart and continue with the work that she started and have faith in God. Because at this time, we can only say what I'm saying. But the pain is in her heart, and she's the only person. She's the only person who feels that pain. We can only support. She has my back, and we'll continue, to pray for her. And talking about, correcting impressions, that's one good thing about him. And about Rawlings, for every leader, you should expect people to tell you stories. I don't think it's only peculiar to Rawlings. Yes, when you're at the top, those down there would come and tell you stories. But as Ambassador Tamaklo said, when you explain to him and he gets to understand and he believes it, then he puts you up. That's when he starts referring to you as a man or woman of integrity. So many times we've heard him saying that. So it's not only peculiar to him. Every leader has that problem. They come and tell you things, but it's for you to cross-check. And anytime, he's had the truth, he turns around and he tends to work with the people. So we've lost somebody big, somebody, I don't know, who cared so much about our country. And I'm lost for words, There's one incident, his charisma. One incident, I remember when the teachers were agitating, and there was a meeting at the State House, the conference room, and before he came in, they didn't even know he was coming. It was Konedu and some other people, Mrs. Vaida, who were going to address the women. So they were talking, they were so angry. They were even threatening that Vaida Yagwa, when she comes, she wasn't going to have it easy. Then, suddenly, Rawlings pops in. The people, there was a particular lady that we knew didn't like Rawlings, and had always said bad things. When the man appeared at the gate, is this same woman who started a song, to encourage Rawlings. I mean, she was taken by surprise. She was moved and she started singing, to extol the virtues of Rawlings. That was his charisma. And at that same meeting, and he has that tendency to go off point and talk about other things that are on his heart. At that same meeting, I remember a boy had been beaten by the stepmother, large with cane marks on the back, and it became an issue. And it wasn't part of the discussion, but he suddenly brought that thing in and raised the issue. That's how come, they took it up seriously, and whoever was involved was punished. Yes, was punished. So when he's convinced about something, he's so passionate. He goes all out, and most often he's been misunderstood. And I am happy that I got to know him, and may he rest in perfect peace.
Ambassador Tamaklo, before you go, we have seen and experienced the life of a great man. He's a very great man. He is a statesman. Since he departed from the political realm from 2001, he has been a statesman until now. His departure, how would you encourage his family to look at that one, to be strong and carry on?
Yes, definitely would encourage them to be strong, would encourage them to live by the tenets of what President Rawlings lived for, would encourage them to walk in his path. I remember in 1996, we were together in Singapore. And one afternoon, we had a free time, the delegation, and had a meeting with President Rawlings, just us. And there was an argument between myself and President Rawlings. And I stood my ground. I told him that I was very sure about what I was saying. He was a bit upset, but this is the mark of a good leader. We got out of the meeting, he came, he held me, he said, I like the way...
A firm position.
The way you were very firm. So keep it up. That was the beginning of a very good relationship. He called me anytime he wanted to check on anything, and I gave him a dispassionate. I will miss him. He shall forever live in my heart and in the hearts of everybody. May he rest in peace.
Peace. Thank you so much. Ambassador Edith Hazel, and then Ambassador Silvanus Tamaklo. It's a pleasure having you in the studio. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine.
I'm not young though.
Sorry.
are ready.
Still at Accra International Conference Center, day 3 of the final funeral rites of the former President of the Republic of Ghana, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. Born 1947, died year 2020 at age 73. His remains will be committed to the grave tomorrow, Wednesday, 27th January 2021. We're now going, stay tuned, we are going for a short playback of all the activities that happened yesterday.
Simply put, a man of the people, a man who lived according to his convictions, a man who was totally committed to the transformation and development of this country, a man who stood for social justice and who never bent or compromised on his principles to the last day. That's the man lying down.
When you look at charismatic leaders, so far as I can tell in Ghana, we've had two, President Nkrumah and President Rawlings, although they were in different eras. Nkrumah did it nationally and internationally. President Rawlings did it locally and nationally.
I'll also remember him as a female lawyer for his PNDC Law 111, interstate succession law. For me, is one of the best things that happened to Ghana, because hitherto, upon the death intestate of a man, his property became family property. And if you were a child, you lived in your father's house subject to good behavior. Thanks to PNDC Law 111, now interstate succession has become relieving.
When you get close to him, he's a very humane, very humorous, very normal person, but at the same time, he had a lot of depth and political insight. I was just about 13 years old when he burst on the scene, and I've been following him since then as a little young. I never dreamt in my life that I would even have the opportunity of working with him, let alone becoming his friend and seeing him as a mentor. But a great man by all standards, no two ways about it. A really, really great man. This is the man who took water, electricity to many parts of this country when people thought it was not possible. And the impact those interventions have made on the lives of ordinary people up to date.
I want the young people to remember him for his probity, accountability, and his dislike for corruption.
When you look at his stature and you look at what he stood for, if we are practicing what he stood for, by now we would have gone far. Probity, accountability, and transparency is key to every government. Even though he was no more in power, he kept talking about that mantra, that Ghanaians should be able to practice that. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to stick to that.
I would say that in 40 years, it should be, said that this foundation, economic, political, social, in terms of probity, accountability, has outlived its biggest proponent, and that is Flight Lieutenant Rawlings.
President Rawlings embodies 4 types of leadership in one person. He was authoritarian in some respects. He was charismatic in some respects. He's laissez-faire in some respect, and he's a servant leader. He was in the Nima gutter with the people.
On the other side of J.J. Rawlings was the fact that the whole nation was enveloped at a point in the culture of silence. And the media in particular were shackled by all kinds of restrictive laws. Example, the newspaper licensing law. It was through the same J.J. Rawlings that we laid a firm, indestructible foundation for the freedom and independence of the media, as articulated in Chapter 12 of the 1992 Constitution. So if today the Ghanaian media have the courage to hold to account people in positions of authority and power, and if today in Africa, Ghana is adjudged one of the best 3 performing media systems on the continent, it's all because J.J. Rawlings laid the foundation.
He was a nationalist and he wanted to work for Ghana. I also saw in him taking care of the poor, sharing his little wealth, and that is the reason why, even when he stepped down as president after 19 years, I did travel with Rawlings, and I could see that he was not somebody who acquired wealth because he was selfless.
I miss him so a lot because he's a father. He's a father to the nation. He's a father to Ghana. He's a father to everybody. He loves everybody. If you are in need and you go to him, he don't hesitate. He don't hesitate at all to help you to deliver your need to where you want to deliver to.
I asked him one day, sometimes you are good, sometimes you are bad. Just because of some things that I've experienced through his school and through his PNDC struggles with a lot of things that happened to my family. My uncle Alhaji Fallu was jailed, a whole lot has happened. But I later realized there are a lot that it was a mistake, and a lot Rawlings have to do it because it's necessary. He must do it.
I say, you've been president for 18 years. What have you done for Volta region? That is remarkable. I say, I did some oil exploration. I did some hospitals. I did some roads. I said, you could have done more. He said, but if I did, people would talk. This is the kind of person you're dealing with.
In his home country of Ghana, he was simply called JJ. In the turbulent times, a nation's expectant youth referred to him as Junior Jesus.
He was a savior, honest person with high integrity.
Hero, revolutionary.
Just an ordinary, hungry, screaming Ghanaian who wants to contribute.
Visionary.
Difficulties were dissolving into chaos, and you needed somebody to actually take the bull by the horn.
Patriotic.
Let me assure you that Africa can work. It is up to the rest of the world to look beyond the prejudiced and sensational images and recognize Africa as the continent of the future.
So there was something about him which you could recognize, so you wouldn't question what he said.
This iconic figure rallied the nation.
He meant well for Ghana.
If he has to pay the ultimate price, he was ready to do that for the good of this country.
His main interest is about the people.
Yet, divided opinions.
Nobody heard Papa's side of the story.
Jerry John Rawlings. Testimonies to a Patriot.
I don't care who you, in Italy, in France, in Britain, America bring into power in my country. But I would wish you would contain them enough from declining into massive corruption and brutality and tyrannical tendencies. Because if you do not contain them, what happens is that they become so corrupt, they are now afraid of free and fair elections, and they refuse to leave power, and then we have volcanic eruptions.
Jerry John Rawlings led Ghana for almost 2 decades as a military leader and a democratically elected president. After a successful second term in office and his country in a far better position, he retired from active politics.
I think he became an uncle to our politics because both sides of the political divide were all moving towards him for advice and for counsel.
I wish he had indulged in politics a little more than he did lately.
From what he told me, he worked closely with people who later on turned their backs on him.
But what I learned about him was his trust of people. He trusted people easily. And when people he trusted let him down, it hurt him so much so. And he himself was trustworthy. He thought everybody was like him.
At the most crucial period, he didn't have people to lean on. He was quite disappointed. And that accounted for his withdrawal.
He was hoping that the party that he had set up, he didn't want to dictate to the party, but he wanted the party to be wary of where the party came from and what had brought the party into being. And the very things that we fought against in 79 and 31st December
when you see it creeping in, you begin to shudder.
One day somebody asked me a question. He said, it appears your boss nowadays is not the kind of boss we knew because he has lost his vibrancy. I said, no, he's now a statesman. So taking partisan positions might not be the best because having regard to the way we do our politics here, it's like if you're out with me, then you are against me. But then he was able to manage that system so well that he attracted both sides. The NDC saw him as our founder, and the MPP also saw him as a stabilizing factor. So that in the event of any problem, we can go to him and seek advice. And I think he did it well, with satisfaction and perfection.
He transformed from the fighter pilot that he was to a statesman. And I must say that I'm very, very proud of him. One of the biggest attributes I found in him was that we started off in the 70s, and we're talking about values, human values. We're talking about these issues about integrity, accountability, and this thing. And I'm very, very confident that all throughout, after all he had been through, even when he was president, you could sit down with him and talk about these values. It's not everybody you could do that with. And sometimes when things were not too strong, you could see that he wasn't as, but he maintained those values. And I really respect him for that.
Jerry Rawlings dedicated his post-presidency period to pursuits of his humanitarian interests. His service to the United Nations, African Union, and other global agencies contributed in making the continent a better place.
He was also, I think, a very strong West African. He was a strong West African where he was willing to commit Ghanaian resources, both financial and human, to ensure peace and security in the sub-region. Because those were turbulent times in the sub-region, from Liberia, Sierra Leone, and all those, where democracy was being threatened, not only, but human life. The stability of those countries were being threatened. And he championed that. One time that Kofi Annan came here, and we had a long debate on this as to what he wanted, not only what he felt Ghana would contribute, but also how he would influence the leaders of that time, like Tijan Kaba at that time, to really live up to certain standards and expectations and so on. So he became a leader really of West Africa to a great extent. Nigeria is a bigger country, but Jerry Rawlings was the one who pushed a lot of things, and as I said, provided the necessary resources and commitment and leadership and even dialogue.
The instability of Liberia is affecting the stability of the sub-region. It's making it difficult to attract investment. It's making it difficult, to improve the image of Africa. So I'm suffering, not indirectly, directly, both through the contribution of my troops to bring about stability and through the fact that, look, it's creating a wrong perception of Africa. So we have a moral obligation to do what we can to bring about the necessary stability, because we are all being judged, all of us, despite the efforts we're making. We're all being judged just by, little things happening here and there.
He was a man of competency, in the sense that he understood peacemaking, he understood bringing people together, he understood real politics, and he understood the geopolitics as well. A man driven by Pan-Africanism, and who throughout his tenure showed it. But President Rawlings was beyond all those things. He was first and foremost a kind human being, a big brother to us, a mentor, someone that we saw as a role model for us.
He was engaging with the different parties in Somalia at the moment, with the Somalia and those of us who were in the international community, trying to ensure that we were dialoguing in the quest for peace in Somalia.
From a young revolutionary to a visionary leader of a proud nation, Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings inspired many across Africa and the world. His name became synonymous with Ghana and was highly respected by leaders, many of whom called him a friend.
Individuals like the former president brought attention to the African continent. These are the individuals who made us seen, made us visible, gave us space at the table.
But these long strides to greatness did not come without huge sacrifices, family, friends, and personal sacrifices.
After we went out of power in 2001, that's when I believe he had a chance to experience real family life with his wife and children. But the formative years, the natural bonding that he should have had with his children was not actually experienced by him, and therefore that was a sacrifice.
Rawlings will not only be the physical evidence across the country we can point to, but a legacy of democracy, of values, principles, his love for the common people, and an echoing voice of conscience for the nation.
Jerry, in my opinion, has done a lot for this country, and he must be highly commended for his service, his commitment to Mother Ghana.
There were 3 letters that came to the office, for instance, and each of them were asking that his name be put. First one was an oil platform. The second one has to do with the ports, some naming ceremony, and they wanted to put his name on it. The third one came from UDS. And he wrote within that letter that he would rather his name be written in the hearts of people than on monuments, roads, and buildings.
According to Dr. Mrs. Grant, who told me, he said when Dr. Frimpong Martin came, he didn't have the support from his superiors. That when one day he came back and called to Mrs. Mary Grant, Dr. Mary Grant took him to Chairman Rawlings, and Chairman Rawlings instructed that immediately he should be assisted in getting a center established.
This is what impressed me about him. He didn't know me, had not seen me before, but the fact that he supported the program told me that he did it not out of political expediency or anything, but he was convinced about what we were doing. And this is something that I thought was very, very impressive.
I had completed my common entrance examination and was awaiting an opportunity to go to Prempeh College. But the funds were not there, even to assist me with a partial scholarship I had. Just by participating in an examination which was organized under the auspices of President Rawlings, I was able to get the opportunity to travel to Cuba and have secondary education, free secondary education for that matter, and tertiary education, and graduate as an optometrist, come back to Ghana, work at several top hospitals, and eventually go into private practice.
He once told me, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. If you are not disciplined, you cannot achieve anything. And I was looking at his face. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment, which is a fact. Say, look at me. I'm a disciplined man. More so, I'm a soldier. What do I need? I can die tomorrow, he was telling me. And this is exactly what has happened.
The former president of Ghana, Jerry Rawlings, has died at the age of 73.
Tributes are pouring in from across the continent after the passing of Ghana's former president, Jerry Rawlings.
He was the first president of our Fourth Republic, a man who held the supreme office in Ghana, and therefore his passage has to be a matter for the Ghanaian nation.
People who are very famous in your life, you don't expect them to die. You don't.
Human as he was, human as I am, it was difficult to associate him with death. He was a personification of life.
How can someone like him die? And how is Ghana going to be when he's not here?
It hit me like a thunderbolt because I never thought for a moment that he will go so soon.
When you have a legacy that he has, you can't mourn someone like that. You have to just celebrate their life, and you thank God that they came through. He's a giant tree that has fallen. But the tree and the ambience and all of that will be here, and his legacy will be with us forever.
A pillar for many, so strong a personality that his passing on shook the nation and the world, leaving many in disbelief. But some say it was characteristic of the man. Enigmatic Jerry Rawlings lived on his own terms.
God knows best, yeah. God knows best. But given the benefit of hindsight and the way he went about his last few working days, he must have known that the time was coming up. In fact, the day he got to the hospital, when I saw him in the hospital the first time, he told me that he was thanking me for making sure that he was sent to the hospital the time he was sent to, because he himself could see that he was a few minutes away from going. But thankfully he got there, so it was okay.
In fact, I was sitting in this chair, and my daughter just came in, and she sat down and she was looking at her phone. She said, "Mommy, I've just seen, have you heard?" I said, "What?" She said, "Uncle Jerry." I said, "What has he done?" He said, "He's passed on." And to tell the truth, I was happy I was sitting down because it was such a big blow. I was so devastated. I was so distraught.
Obia ono na atito ni na ejuma sa bebia odi na ekoba na prekwa pe mpana fiusa. It's easy, sir, but yami bebe yami sukrai.
I'm in denial, you know. I'm in denial. I don't want to believe that he's dead. I didn't know he was ill. And although he was admitted somewhere for about a week or so, I was never told. Never. I didn't know anything. And I could have visited him or maybe given advice as to what to be done and so on. But it happened. And it was shocking.
I don't believe this. I don't believe it is. It's normal. I will believe it after I've seen the body with my eye and
if I have the opportunity to touch it, which maybe I won't have the opportunity to touch it. But it will be very difficult for me to believe that my godfather is no more.
It was the straw that broke the camel's back that day. It was bad. It was really bad. He can never be replicated. He was different, and he was solid, and he was sincere. He was loyal. Of all my husband's friends, he was the most. He had the most integrity, and it's difficult to come across people like that. If they care for you, they care for you, and no strings, no conditionalities, nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if he kept on wondering why I didn't fall on him more often. But for me, it was just enough that he was there. It was just enough that he was there.
Extending my heartfelt condolences, my most profound thoughts and prayers will be with us throughout. We pray and hope that Jerry Jones will rest in peace. His perfect soul will rest in peace. I'm sorry.
To the generation that came of age in the 80s and 90s, J.J. Rawlings will remain a towering man of action, an embodiment of a people's struggle for a better life and a better Ghana.
He started as a dictator. He died a Democrat. I would want to salute the late President Rawlings, and I will do so on behalf of all my colleagues in the profession of arms at the time who remained in the trenches with him, who fought along together. We were fighting poverty. We were fighting greed. All those things that we were fighting, on behalf of all those, I still salute him today, even though he's not with us. And I would like to extend my condolences to his wife, his dear wife, and his children. Indeed, to all Ghanaians, because I think we've lost a formidable leader. Not only because he did everything right, but as a human being, in the course of your performance, certainly it's not everything that's going to go right, but majority of what he did helped save this country. And beyond, I think, he did so for other African countries. I talk about Liberia. Sierra Leone is there, you know.
Well, he's someone to be missed. I spent these last few months, particularly because of the mother's death, very close to him. And his death is hard, but you consider what he's done for the country. He was dedicated, and he was a true patriot. I don't care what anybody says. He would do anything for this republic.
It will take me some time to recover. But God's ways are not our ways. May the giant soldier rest in perfect peace.
If salvation is a matter of believing what God said, he had it. Believing what God said about his only begotten son, he had it. His life may not be perfect like any of us, but I can assure you he has the heart of Christ. May his soul rest in peace. And anybody who knows these things about him, thank God for meeting him. It's been a privilege.
The white man who brought the Bible into my country, he's the same person who has gone and invented the lie detector test, the chemical interrogation test. I would dare you to go and line up some of your finest policemen, some of your finest heads, some of your finest, what you call it, judges. Make any allegations against me. Whatever questions you want to ask, take me through a chemical interrogation. I will be the one who will pass. If we can learn to be bold enough to restore the value of truth in our society, then we will have justice.
His name lives on as a perpetual flame that will continue to burn in the hearts of all who seek justice, probity, accountability, and social justice for all Ghanaians.
Don't you know your power? Why? Why? They know Ghana is the political light to Black Africa. Whatever Ghana initiates, steps up other places. You have a responsibility. Please. A lot of you no doubt know this, but how do you implement this? The victory, will come from you. They've orchestrated a whole lot of blunders. That is as the one very good and rewarding thing. But that era, in their attempt to break it, the revolutionary thing fomenting in the country. Emasculation, to keep you and I down, to see things from only the limited perspectives that are fair to us.
The higher you build your barriers.
Finding himself at the helm of the ship of state, J.J. Rawlings offered his countrymen a style of leadership which was at complete variance with what the nation had experienced. The concern expressed by him for the welfare of the vast majority of Ghanaians who live in the remotest areas of the land is shown by the many visits he has paid to whip up their enthusiasm.
The happiness I'm expressing is most sincere and fresh each time, because I see through the strength of our dear nation embodied in the people gathered together at such occasions. And from such gatherings, I return to my work with renewed strength and vigor to carry on my part of the task which confronts us all as a nation.
The more you refuse to give. The higher you build your barriers, the taller.
This is one place, you see, uninhabited. Fair enough. And one thing I mean from pioneers, no. Ladies and gentlemen, give us something in a few years' time. Say who a from place are. Let it be testimony, a reflection of a new Ghana of a kind. People who moved into a new land, explored it and built it. For those of you who are going to be working on the grounds and plowing the fields, please watch out. I know the Afram plains well. I've done tractor work before using plows, harrows, and the ease with which we can snap the chains, parts of the plow, when you run into stumps. The Afram plains, the plains we call it, with so many bushfires, the irregular farming activities, the ground is full of stumps. You will find half the time you'd have your tractors packed because you've busted a tire or you've broken a chain. So please, for those who are supposed to be doing the land clearing work, take note of this point, the stumps. For all that you've done, and I can assure you, sir, these places are inaccessible. Thank you.
Your barriers.
Gold mining, especially, has seen significant improvement. At Obuasi, for example, the Ashanti Goldfields Corporation is sinking new shafts.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about is teamwork, the mutual respect which exists between members of a team dedicated to achieving a positive goal, irrespective of their rank, irrespective of their race, color, or skin. And I believe that Ashanti Goldfields can offer us a number of lessons about teamwork. We have welcomed genuine investors who are prepared to accept our mission to build a just, prosperous, and dignified nation. And the partnership between Ghana and foreign investors in this particular mine is today a good example of the mutual benefits that such a relationship can achieve. We welcome foreign investors who are willing to respect our rights and make a meaningful contribution to the economic development of the country. My brothers and sisters, all over the country, the very important exercise of registering all qualified voters is taking place. Many of the people who are now qualified to vote have never taken part in this kind of exercise before. Someone who is just over 18 years old today might have been only 8 years old or in primary class 2 or 3 when the last registration exercise probably took place. It is therefore not surprising that there are some misunderstandings about the purpose and importance of this exercise, and therefore a corresponding need for more public education. It is the duty of all patriots, be they chiefs, town development committees, CDRs, 31st December Women's Movement and Progressive Associations, CDOs, to assist in educating members of their communities. Our teachers will be useful in this exercise. Everybody is aware that registration is a necessary prelude to voting. If If your name is not on the voters' register, you cannot vote, and neither can you present yourself as a candidate for election.
My light will shine so brightly it will blind. The higher you build.
Another noteworthy visitor was Mwalimu Dr. Julius Nyerere, the chairman of the South Commission and former president of the Republic of Tanzania. For his contribution to the struggle to emancipate the African continent, he was decorated with the nation's highest honor, Order of the Star of Ghana. Of school children and organized dance troops, which normally turn out for official welcome ceremonies, were swallowed up by thousands of people who had walked several kilometers from the outskirts of Lome just to catch a glimpse of the man they heard so much about.
The swearing in of President-elect Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. And at this stage, everybody will be expected to stand as the President is sworn in by His Lordship, the Chief Justice, Mr. Isaac K. Aban. And there you have the state sword. And let me remind you, it is in solid gold.
I repeat after you.
Rich, solid gold.
Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings.
Do in the name of the Almighty God.
Do in the name of the Almighty God.
Swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance.
Swear that I will bear true faith.
There's a battle to be fought. There are obstacles to overcome. There's a world struggle for human dignity to be won. Let us address ourselves seriously to the supreme tasks that lie ahead. To accomplish these aims, Africa must unite. The fanciful flights of the imagination of the past have unloaded this cargo of disappointments on the very determined people of Ghana. In their disappointments, a new seed has been sown. In a dynamic world, the seed of the revolution must grow, since anything that refuses to change very soon becomes irrelevant and outmoded. The seed is not the tree. How the branches grow can only be determined by the efforts that go into its nurturing. That is how revolutions progress.
Your barriers.
The swearing in of President-elect Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. And at this stage, everybody will be expected to stand.
Your barriers.
Money is the one you see
Jerry John Rawlings,
on the right-hand side of
Jerry John Rawlings. Do in the name of the Almighty God swear.
Do in the name of the Almighty God swear.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith.
And allegiance.
And allegiance.
To the Republic of Ghana.
To the Republic of Ghana.
As by law established.
As by law established.
That I will uphold.
That I will uphold.
The sovereignty.
The sovereignty.
The integrity.
barriers.
There are many, many people in this country who will heave a sigh of relief to hear your restoration in this association. True. Whether you like them or not, you cannot deny the fact that very often they're standing for truth and justice. Even in the Bible, they tell us to obey our conscience, because that one tells you the ultimate truth. Very often, even when you run into places where you're not liked by the very people you're fighting for, if you ask them in their privacy, when they get into trouble, you're the ones they come to. Ladies and gentlemen, in other words, I want you to maintain that tenacity, that loyalty, that dedication to the truth, no matter what it costs you, ladies and gentlemen, because the country needs it, our people need it. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it, we still have problems ahead of us. Economic problems, serious ones. There's only one thing I want to ask of you. When it comes to the truth, you've stood by it day and night without a penny, on empty stomachs. Don't compromise it.
Welcome back to the Accra International Conference Center, where we're still observing the day 3 of the funeral of the former President of the Republic of Ghana, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. But before we take you through this afternoon's program, let's watch these pictures of activities that happened at the conference center today. Welcome back to the Accra International Conference Center, day 3 of the funeral of former President Jerry John Rawlings. From the morning, we have seen the filing past of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana and the First Lady, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Rebecca Akufo-Addo. We've also seen the Vice President and the Second Lady, that is Vice President Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia and Samira Bawumia, also filed past. Now we saw the Chief of Staff. We've seen the former President John Agyapong Kufuor in an electronic wheelchair. And then we saw also the former President John Dramani Mahama and wife Lordina Mahama also filing past the remains of the former President of the Republic of Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. The activity is about observing and really living the very example of beautiful life of ex-President Jerry John Rawlings. We have had discussions with a couple of people talking about him, those who have worked with him. And most of the people we have spoken to are people that really lived with former President Rawlings in his activities at home. This afternoon, I have the privilege of being in the studio with Ambassador Patrick Hayford, High Commissioner of Ghana to South Africa 1997 to 1999, Director for Africa Executive Office of the United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan from 1999 to 2005. Ambassador Patrick is here with me, and let me first welcome Ambassador. Ambassador Patrick, you are welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Right.
It's an honor to be here.
It's a very big privilege for me to talk to such a distinguished person. And it is only unfortunate that it is happening at a time that we are going to bury another great person. But I think we all take consolation in the fact that it is building one mother Ghana. Yeah. And that is what we are looking out for.
Absolutely.
Yes, Ambassador Patrick Hayford, I want to talk to you about the foreign policy that J.J. Rawlings represented. It gets to a time people think that he was more African than being a Ghanaian, because he really represented, and people from Africa really enjoyed him. Now, Ambassador Patrick, let's now look at how would you describe Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, how the people of the rest of the world saw him?
Well, thank you very much indeed, sir. You know, the first thing I'll say is this. The impact, the image, the influence of former President Rawlings was based on what he helped to bring about in Ghana. Now, sir, there's a context. Those of us of a certain generation remember when Ghana was a laughing stock. And I remember there was a time there were quiz programs in Nigeria. What country in Africa has no soap, no toothpaste, etc., etc.? And everybody knew they were talking about Ghana. Those of us of a certain generation remember when you had to sit in your car for 2 days to get 1 gallon of petrol at the petrol station. Those of us of a certain generation remember when tens of thousands of Ghanaian professionals, in the days of Kalabuli in the Kutu Agyapong era, tens of thousands of our professionals left these shores to seek greener pastures. This was the Ghana of the era leading up to June 4th, 79. And this was an important background to any discussion of the impact of President Rawlings in foreign policy. As they say, sir, foreign policy is based on and is an extension of domestic policy. The first few years of the PNDC, some of us recall, the PNDC leader, President Rawlings, and his wife, Nana Konidu, did not travel out of Ghana for years. They spent the first few years traveling to every corner of Ghana. By the time they started to travel internationally, Ghana's severe economic problems, the issues of political stability, etc., were on a downward track. And with the basis was laid for a recovery. Why do I say this? President Rawlings' impact, let me start with West Africa. You all recall the era of civil war in Liberia, civil war in Sierra Leone, problems elsewhere. Now, as Ghana achieved relative political stability, and as Ghana's economy, in a sense, turned the corner, it was then that President Rawlings and his wife began to project themselves internationally. So, over a period of years, they became active on the African scene, in West Africa, on the wider African scene, and internationally. So I think it's very important in discussing the international impact of President Rawlings to remember that this was an extension of what had happened inside Ghana. Slowly, steadily, Ghana was no longer a laughingstock, even within Africa. Our economy slowly started mending. There was a steady progress in terms of attaining political stability. Ghana played an important role in ECOMOG, in Sierra Leone and in Liberia. All this gradually helped to restore the image of Ghana in West Africa and wider afield. And if I might quickly move on, it was in that context that in 1996, when it became clear that Boutros Ghali would not get a second term as Secretary General of the UN, and it became clear also that unless a viable African candidate quickly emerged, the UN Security Council would move on and somebody from another region would be selected. It was in that context that Kofi Annan's candidature emerged. But it required his own country, Ghana, to sponsor him. Now, if Ghana had still been a laughingstock internationally, unstable in total economic chaos, etc., any candidature from Ghana would not have been viable. It was because Ghana was on the mend, was recovering a certain measure of international credibility. Our economy was slowly rebounding. That helped to make it viable and possible for Ghana under President Rawlings to put forward Kofi Annan for the candidature of Secretary General of the UN. Now also, because of the stature, the respect other African leaders had for President Rawlings, Secretary General Kofi Annan's candidature became quickly viable and an African consensus emerged, which then facilitated Mr. Kofi Annan's election as Secretary General of the UN. I hope I've answered your question.
You have answered my question correctly.
I've tried to provide a context.
You have given a frame, and it is well situated, and it is established.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. Yes.
into the rest of the world to get that support that he achieved it within a very short time. How did he do it?
I would say he did not achieve it in a very short time. Remember, he first emerged on the scene in May 1979. Then June 4th, 79 occurred. Then we had the return to civilian rule in September 79. Then came 31st December 81. And President Rawlings was in power first in the PNDC and later with the return to multi-party democracy in 92, right up to 2001. There was a progression, there was a long series of processes which led to the political stability, lots of twists and turns, lots of ups and downs, lots of turmoil, but eventually Ghana got there. Ghana, under his leadership, emerged as a multi-party democracy with a free press, separation of powers, etc., etc. But it was a gradual process. I think it's important not to see it as something that happened very quickly. It did not happen quickly.
I'm asking the question
based
based on
steady progression.
Yes, I'm asking the question based on the background that in 81 he became the head of state. In 82, Ghana was not ready to go to the All-African Games in Libya.
Yes.
But in 82, he decided that Ghana would go to Libya.
Yes.
And Ghana won the cup in Libya.
For the last time.
For the last time. That is the only last time.
Yes.
And so I'm asking the question based on the background that how did he think that it was right for him to remove the boycott of Libya, 82, and go to Libya and benefit from Libya?
Political courage. My answer to you is very simple. Political courage. The ability to take tough, sometimes unpopular decisions. That is leadership. That is one of the key components of good leadership. So he had the political courage. He had that determination, that conviction. A true leader also has conviction, strong conviction, belief in what he or she is trying to do. He had that. So at that time, the dark days of 82, he took the political decision. And lo and behold, Ghana went and won the cup. And that was the last time we won it. So again, it was an example of political courage, of risk-taking, of leadership, leading from the front. So my answer to you is yes, this is a textbook example of political leadership, of courage, of conviction, of commitment, and love for Ghana.
And love for Ghana.
And love for Ghana.
Was the African continent quick to accept him?
No.
As a political leader?
No.
And trust him to run with him?
Absolutely not. Again, I want to emphasize there was a gradual progression from his being perceived as a firebrand revolutionary who was going to, in a sense, tear everything up. Gradually, that perception evolved. And again, I want to emphasize, it's based on what the rest of Africa saw, the rest of the world saw, of Ghana slowly, with great difficulty, evolving from a basket case economically and politically into a period of relative stability, then slow economic recovery, and then evolving back to multi-party democracy, constitutional rule. So in that long process of years, gradually, the rest of Africa came to respect former President Rawlings. They came to respect his leadership. And I would like to emphasize the people all of Africa saw in him leadership of conviction, leadership of commitment, and leadership of honesty. Again, this integrity. His lifestyle, the way he carried himself, the way it was obvious this man loved his country. He loved his people. Even though in a sense you could say he's only half Ghanaian. That's the irony. This wonderful man who was only half Ghanaian loved Ghana in some ways more than, if I may say so, many of us. So gradually the African continent grew to appreciate the commitment of this man to make Ghana better. They grew to appreciate, he had this connection with the ordinary people. You see it now.
Sure.
His death has been a shock to everybody. And the outpouring of grief from ordinary Ghanaians, particularly, tells you that he struck a chord with them. And I always like to say it very simply. He gave a voice to the voiceless. He helped to empower the powerless. And he remembered the forgotten people. And that's what resonated. I hope I've answered.
I think you've answered. But now let's look at him. Let's look at former President Rawlings. And then the leadership, some of the heads of states or presidents on the African continent. We got to a time that you could see that we had to have the OAU and then move into OAU conferences. In Libya for 4 times, it was not successful. Right. But then he still stayed around and made sure that it has to continue, and we moved on. And then we have to get to a time that he can even now sponsor Kofi Annan to become United Nations Secretary General. How did he massage this whole situation to put it and make sure that the results was beautiful for the country and beautiful for Africa?
Well, a very good question. Again, I'm sorry to keep coming back to leadership. This is what leadership is about. Setting an example, leading the way.
But he came in young.
Inspiring people.
He came in very
having conviction.
With a cool background. And those times Cuba was very unpopular.
Well, that is a measure of his achievement. That he was able to evolve from a military cool background into the statesman that he became. And the depth of his commitment to Ghana is reflected in the fact that he was able to make that evolution into a statesman, from a military leader into a democratically elected leader with a constitution. It's a measure of the man that he was able to make that transition from the coup background, the revolutionary background, and then laying a certain foundation, which then made it possible for Ghana to evolve into a democracy.
Ambassador Hayford,
yes.
Can you say that you credit him, Jerry John Rawlings, the person, young soldier, not political, coming in, learning the ropes, sitting on the old Ghana horse, pointing it to a future, or it was people like the diplomats, the people, the technocrats that really did the job for him?
It was first and foremost he himself.
He himself.
Leadership, commitment. I repeat, commitment, conviction, determination, political courage. It took all of that.
So he knew what he was doing.
He deserves great credit for the evolution, the growth that he went through as a political leader, the strong commitment, the desire, the determination to make Ghana better, and his ability to connect with the people of Ghana. So they believed in him. That made it possible for him to lead the way into the Fourth Republic we have today. The fact that we've had, 8 multi-party elections in a row, peacefully. And when we've had issues, instead of guns blazing, we go to the courts. And now Ghana is an icon. Ghana is an example for the rest of Africa that it is indeed possible to evolve through all kinds of twists and turns into a stable, multi-party democracy with respect for basic human rights, with freedom of the press, etc., etc.
So
So he deserves a lot. I'm not trying to say he alone did it. Yeah. No, he did it leading the people of Ghana. So the people of Ghana, he would be the first to say that the greatest credit goes to his own people, the wonderful people of Ghana. But he helped lead the way. So I just want to emphasize that. Yes. No, but he deserves a great deal of the credit. Because it took political courage to make the evolution that he made.
Now, how did you see Ghanaians abroad receive him when he was the head of state and later the president of the country? Whenever he moved out there and met them, how did Ghanaians receive him?
Now, again, it's very interesting to watch the evolution. June 4th, 79, in that short interregnum, the 3 months, Ghanaians abroad were confused, and many of them, quite frankly, were terrified. They were worried about what was happening in Ghana, the upheaval, etc. 31st December 81, I would say that the Ghanaian diaspora response to and reaction to former President Rawlings also evolved. I would say from 31st December 81 for a few years. Again, because of the upheavals, the attempted coup d'etat, etc., and the severe economic deprivation of part of that period, coupled with the exodus of Ghanaians from Nigeria, etc., the reaction to him was guarded. People were watching, they were concerned, there was a big guarded. But gradually, as Ghana became more stable, as Ghana's economy stabilized and slowly, I emphasize slowly, began to recover, as Ghana's image improved, the Ghanaian diaspora recognized that this extraordinary personality was making a difference in Ghana and was helping move Ghana in a generally positive direction. I choose my words carefully. And then as we evolved to a return to multi-party democracy, constitutional rule, a free press, etc., etc., the Ghanaian diaspora then warmed to him. And as he traveled more and more and spoke to the Ghanaian public in all these countries, he was always made sure to meet the Ghanaian community. And his obvious passion and love for the country, his appeals to them to come back home and rebuild the country, you could see when you sat with him how passionate he was about Ghana. And that resonated with people everywhere he went, all over the world. And so gradually the Ghanaian diaspora also warmed to him because they saw in him a patriot, they saw in him a leader, they saw in him somebody who was truly committed to the welfare of Ghana, their motherland. And he helped mobilize many Ghanaian communities to do things back home, to help improve things. So gradually the diaspora warmed to him. That's my advice.
Now let us now come back to some of the values.
I hope I've answered your question.
You've answered my question. Some of the values that former President Rawlings lived on: probity, accountability, fighting corruption, and integrity. You know, the rest of the world saw African continent as where there is resources, but these resources tended to be looted by its own leaderships. And this was a young man who was fighting corruption. How did the rest of the world receive his fight against corruption, his anti-corruption fight?
You know, I'll tell you a true story. You know, there's nothing like a story to illustrate things. Somewhere in the early 80s, the then president of the World Bank, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, was on an African tour. He came to Ghana. It so happened that then PNDC leader, Mr. Rawlings, was up country inspecting a project. So it became necessary to fly the World Bank president to meet the head of state inside the country, somewhere, I've forgotten where. When the World Bank president arrived at the place, it was deep in the boondocks somewhere. So apparently President Rawlings was busy helping to lay a pipe or something somewhere. So he was in, I think, a T-shirt, helping the workers there as head of state. So they ushered the World Bank president to his presence. And apparently the man was so stunned that he had never seen an African head of state dirtying his hands in a development project. Now, this is a true story. This is the type of engagement, conviction, and commitment that it wasn't fake, it was genuine. And this resonated. And so the donor community, the development banks, and others also felt encouraged that at last here was an African leader of a certain commitment, of a certain integrity, and therefore they felt if they came to help Ghana, at least most of the resources would go for the purpose intended. Have I answered your question?
You have answered my question.
This is what happened.
This is a practical, it is a technical, practical situation that you have painted to me. Now,
that kind of hands-on commitment. And also, I would also say this, over the years, the members of his government, to a large extent, were terrified of him because he could call you that, hey, Chief, what is this I hear you've built some some mansion in your hometown? Where did you get the money from? Because he himself was not building mansions in his hometown. So at that time, many of those in his government were terrified because they knew that he would call them to account when they stepped out of line in terms of corruption and things like that. Because he himself was not stealing. So he could, deal with them.
Yes, you can ask the question.
So he kept, as we say, close mark on the members of his government. And as and when he caught some of them fiddling or messing up, he dealt with them firmly. But his own firmness and his own example, he and his wife, made most of them also stay on the straight and narrow path. With a few exceptions here and there. Human nature being
a few exceptions here a few exceptions here and there.
I hope I've answered
you've answered my question. Now let us now look at the man lying
there. Yes.
If we look at former President Rawlings in the casket, probity, accountability, integrity, social justice, is that to him, were they just words, or from your point of view, he really meant using them, and he respected and loved them?
These were definitely not just words. These were hallmarks of what he tried to do. He did his very best. And the reason why we are mourning him, celebrating his life, is precisely because, with all the caveats, former President Rawlings inspired us to reach for those ideals of probity, accountability. And I repeat, he gave a voice to the voiceless. He helped empower the powerless. And he remembered the forgotten people in this country. That's why we are celebrating his life now. So please, probity, accountability, integrity were not for him, they were not just words. They were goals and principles to aim for, to try and live by. Yes, being the human beings we are, we may slip up here and there. But by and large, he tried to inspire us in that direction. And above all, he was always on the lookout for the least among us, for the voiceless, for the poor, for the marginalized. Those were the people who were very much at the center of his attention. And that's why there is such an outpouring of grief, because many people felt that, you know, let me quote, when FDR died, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt died in America, there was a massive outpouring of grief. And apparently, a journalist asked some people, but why are you weeping like this for FDR? You know the answer some people gave? FDR knew me. In other words, they felt that he was with them, he knew them, he cared about them, he reached out to them. Similarly, the reason why there's such an outpouring here in Ghana is that many of the ordinary people of this country, the regular folks, the men and women who toil every day in the farms and the factories, in the schools and hospitals, they felt that J.J. Rawlings knew them. He spoke for them. He felt their pain. He tried to address their needs. And above all, he helped give them a voice, he helped empower them, and he remembered them.
Remember them. Now, let me now look at this. Maybe the last but one question. Let me look at this. What will disappoint you after his death? What will happen for you to think that J.J. Rawlings came to waste his time? What will happen?
You know, my dear friend, now that I'm 70 and well retired, I speak very frankly. What makes me sad, quite frankly, is that there are people who were nobodies. There were people who were nobodies. And thanks to Jerry John Rawlings, some of them today are multimillionaires. He made them what they are. They are the greedy bastards he talked about. They are the babies with sharp teeth he talked about. And they have the impudence, even so them in his own, the party he founded. They have insulted him over and over. Some of them even have the impudence to write books full of lies. And today some of them are shedding crocodile tears. That's what makes me angry. The greedy bastards, the babies with sharp teeth. Some of them are now multimillionaires who've never done a day's serious work in their lives. They got into politics because of Jerry John Rawlings. And today some of them have the impudence, the arrogance to have insulted him. And now they are saying tears and others are shedding crocodile tears. That's what makes some of us angry.
Now let me take this last question. What advice will you give to the youth of today? That looking at the youth of today and directing the youth of today and looking at the values that J.J. Rawlings stood for, how would you talk to the youth of today?
The youth of today, you know, we have this problem. Every generation complains about the youth of the day. Every generation. So me, I'm 70 now. We all complain about the youth of today. But please, let's give them a break. The youth of today are our children and grandchildren. So whatever challenges they have, whatever shortfalls they have, we should point the finger at ourselves. We should have done better as parents and grandparents. Let me start with that. Yes, let's have less greed, less acquisitiveness. Let's return to traditional values of integrity, hard work. But let me repeat, we, the older generation, should be very careful pointing accusing fingers at the younger generation. Because the younger generation look at us, and they look at what we do, not what we say. So if we had provided a better example for them as parents and grandparents, as leaders, as role models, then some of what we are saying about the young people today would not apply. So let's start with ourselves. We, the older generation, let us set a better example for our children and grandchildren. And then we can point fingers at them.
And then we can point fingers at them.
Thank you.
If not so, then it looks as
we should be very careful in our criticism of them. Because they look at us, not what we say. They look at what we do, the lives that we live. And many of us in the older generation, I'm sorry to say, are living lives completely what we say and what we do are two different things. So our children and grandchildren see that we are hypocrites, so they don't take us seriously. Thank you.
Ambassador Patrick Hayford, it's a great pleasure talking to you.
It's been an honor for me. I'm sorry I speak so frankly.
No,
but I think
that is exactly. As a journalist, when I ask a question, I'd want the question to be answered and answered candidly.
Thank you.
And so when I see someone who can flow and answer the question, and I'm happy you said, at this your age, why should you lie?
Why should I lie?
At this your age, you can't lie.
Every word I've uttered, I meant.
And I'm grateful.
And, one of the greatest injunctions in the Bible, fear not. So we're not afraid.
We're not afraid.
Thank you very much.
I hope you'll be around to see the final funeral rites for J.J. Rawlings tomorrow.
Amen.
Yes.
We pray. We pray.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest.
I've enjoyed this.
I've enjoyed too as well. Right. Thank you, Ambassador Patrick Hayford. Ready? Welcome back to the Accra International Conference Center, where we are observing day 3 of the final funeral rites of the late former President of the Republic of Ghana, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. As you can see in your pictures, the last part of the program is talking about traditional and customary rights, and you have seen in your pictures the arrival of, you will see, these are the representatives of the Otumfuo from the Ashanti region. The Ashanti Kingdom are here to support the funeral, and the funeral, you know, the wife of the former president, Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings, is from the Ashanti region, and a royal from, so Otumfuo Nenana. Otumfuo rep. The Otumfuo is represented here. The delegation is led by Berima Sago Twenebu Akodia. Berima Sago Twenebu Akodia. Berima Safo Twenebu Akodia. He is representing the Otumfuo at the final funeral rites of the late former President Jerry John Rawlings at the Accra International Conference Center. They are now in to pay their last respect to the husband of their daughter, Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings. So you have just seen the performance of the traditional group that had come from the Ashanti region, that is Asante Hene's representatives at this funeral of former President Jerry John Rawlings. The team is led by Berima Safo Twenebu Akodia, who is the Kumewu Hene. And you know the Kumewu Hene, therefore, is representing the Asante Hene at the funeral of a daughter who is burying the husband. And you know the tradition that demands, and so you can see that this is pure tradition, and this is the pure Ashanti tradition that is on display. What you see there, the smoke you see there is the incense, and these are things that are done in the traditional funeral settings. And it ought to have significance, and the significance are clear. And so that is what is observed, we are observing at the Accra International Conference Center. And this is marking almost closer to the end of day for day 3. Then day 4, preparing the grounds. This is preparing the grounds for the funeral for tomorrow. And this is in honor of their daughter, Nana Kunedu Agyapong Rawlings, who is setting state mourning a departed husband. Setting with there's a Kumewu Hene setting, that is Berima Safo Twenebu Akodia. Still at the Kwame Nkrumah, still at the Accra International Conference Center, where we're observing day 3, the closing stages of day 3 of the final funeral rites of the former president, the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. On your pictures now is Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings, the wife and daughter of the Asantehene, who has sent a delegation, and the delegation is led by Beruma Safo Twenebu Akodia, the Kumawu Hene. Fortunately with us, in the studio with me, is Nana Afrifa Yamoa, the Kumawu Sumpa Hene. But viewers, I will plead with you that we would change from the English language and would speak Twi. Inti Manfo, yabe mene Nana Kumawu Sumpa Hene, Nana Afrifa Yamoa, yabe bon komono Twi. Inti Nana Afrifa Yamoa, Yamoa. Nana.
The lieutenant, Asantema Mirimuno, Yanto Kumo Asakra, Sawaba, no Majana, Yapa, Yamaya, Mamrania, Mania, Senia Fatabia, the Jaruka, Asantim before more on one hour to the crack more, and not in your.
So, in short, what they're saying is that the Asantehene is of the view, and they say they believe that there is life after death. And they know that definitely former President Jerry Rawlings will go he will go and he will meet the people there, the dead ancestors there. He wants them to, he's sending a message through Jerry to their ancestors there, that so that the ancestors there would know that one of them
Namo senior, what to know, then Papa question said, Omra no meja na say, this year the BB Aquano, Omo Akomana Quaba, Omo Busano Quaso, or no Swabana money in Sera Santimura, Nasumano, so on so often a Numuniam Cassia, Mnameta and Ne, a Mamre Jumadia Yedi, I say, Yura, Obaya, Yomo Aquaba, Kete.
And they are still with their daughter, even in death. So that is what they have come here to do. So we still see very much Chinubu Kodia, who is the Kumewu Hene, sitting in state, and come to the funeral to support former First Lady, Nana Kunedu Agyapong. Nana, where they Nana Afrifa Yamoa, Nadas. Minim say wo adwuma ne nsan ye wobekọ hɔ akɔtoa so nti ene ma menya wo na kɔtoa wo adwuma no so na ye nhwɛ ba ye nyina ye ma ye ho yakɔ
kakra me kan say ye ma me adwuma kradu wo ye de se kronkron efra santene na papa die so wo de ne ho bedom ye ma me na ofa ne se ne yere no wa ma asante enemu angu aseda da ne da na otu anamabo otumfo se na ase no enu tie ne se ye na nanom afrɛ na na yetimi nya no so no nko anu ntino ya de breso san ne asanta mabrum de sene fata e de bejam no so kwa onum bi wo kwa so no fa bi nso ko ba man ne e ma ye nananom no mu se ne awotuma na man be ye ya to talent anu to monye na wa tu o ba bi ba
osi oba ye boade si brekete si banti makotie yesu aure aye na ne yesu auko esi oba si brekete si banti makrotie yeah aye na ne yesu auko esu be ye boade aye jaki ka wobwa akasa wobwa esu awusu obara kwa aye jina na tapokwe yesu awukwa osu be ye boade si brekete si banti makrotie yesu awe aye na ne yesu auko esu si banti makrotie yeah aye na ne yesauko ne kura na pampa so kura ekura na pampa so kura na kura ko bi eku na utekura hanui na kura ko bi eku na utekura hasen na kumbo ni ye una mania engineer tapokwe na una mania obibro aye wo brego sansan brego na eje aye wo brego sansan brego na eje aye wo brego mismi ko jana yo e yo brefo amene na mantia yesi mabu o ana konfra hine e una mania wo bimlo ebo wo ko befu ana ni enyawo na mo ku ya samfue wakwa befu ana wenyamio na mo ku ya samfue wakwa befu ana ye obi ewe ye no obi ewe no bi no egbo ana ye obi ewu pa bo ana ye obi ewu
Yadamasi, Montrase, Yadamasi Bebre. Ebrenunti. Yadamasi Bebre, we di adansi epefe se asante mawura ni sunsum awrafia. Amamne no ene ye hya ase no. Sabre ye nche kra metume safre na osu bempa. One oba panyi mame mansa na womde ote kokoso na disiede ene asante hema adisiede aba. Program ya ye ewo TV nyina so ewo Ghana ti obia enhwe na yantoto ne mama ne nyina anya kama na osu bempa ya mame mansa ya hwemu
Chami wadaroma wa tia miai anto barima safo anto bema safo tubo akodi otosu mienu eye kuma hine yo tu fo tu no mo be si na nai na mo no na se eye ase samijira na mjira mo ti kokoso otu fo se tutu abebi o club ya sante kotoko hine Osi abra no nasi oda de benku so no ampa abusua ire de ma nanu mu di animu ye bese no otumfo bu ni sanene nasi dampem otumfo ma be baya osi balma safo twinubu akodua onsa aya snap pantu mienu whiskey strada osi je na fe twasa fie sana busha dia to mani ere ne ma osomo dia snap adaka baako ya pantu nsia whiskey pantu osomo nyino fa twa safie otumfo ase se do na sinisi tia no ti man ko dan samanjaja to ma me ba ya ntuba fufuro bonwe kente ya od bakata no so no na na madaroma ne busha bi gina ha ma mani no no edamasi
Mbetie me kakra mijira ma na akwadu ya mota so me ansa asante yema ne nti na mijira ha enche bia na ne ba ene ne nananom ene abusua Emma na nasote. So no na se kane mampanyini. Wachina anu ayobai. Na akwa du papa. Fisa na se prekope no. Obu nano ene na eso aye gya na se kwai. Wose wantimi ntina kuma se saa. Osuma ya ma ya bai. Wose amna me ya santi amam na sane fata. Ni afanya na se kwai. Tina kwa du ma me ba ya. Wose ne mane ne nananom ene na busua wo mu buro ni sapantu. Saa na kuma wu hene obesi wotumfu anan. Wose buro ni sapantu. Wose okuta abonwira nsadua so epoa. Yamfa nkata na se so. Na nasi drun siado ni abusansa na kentaya wutu we ya krache na ye de kentaya no akase awale pa me kwa no wo asante mamu enti ne de kentaya gya me kwan na kwa aduma me ba ya na mama ne no.
So, Doctor, Honorable Zeneto. Yadamasi bebre. Yadamasi. Yabesa babiem. Mama yenti nsama boy. Yadamasi yadu babi ehia pa yewi abesa babiem. Yengu mujom. Nana bempa kasa no na bibi tuato na enam agro na ebehye mu nti no adru bra wodi yewura asantema wura wote kokoso ne nsanwa eba nti nana pemba
yo nananom abusia ne jamfo nyara otufo no maame do ma ba yina achi no omo se tie biara a chamba sa atnase to otufo no maame se 5,000 Ghana cedis obi the two room a jamfo nya do fun mo so an gusuma no na mi gina ha ma mani no damasi
Chiame. Dede kan. Asida PSA na ndebe mamira. Kotokoni 240 tutu. Abebio. Se wetu me. Around in Pabua, Keshi Hashem said, me man be seen at 9. Nana Damfo. Nasi. Nadi nyina. Ebra. Odawoi. Memra na membe na bibia entoto ye. Ye mani de ye kura. Na meni na sayache. Ira ni na sayache. Fie du no ni echire ni. Oni na sayache. Futu bia obia wo de amano. Amankuta wudi o ma die. Yinyina ya ni tua. Kanka edura kwasidea. Anajuma die kase bi ko so wo manhia. Woba. Ba betane chi. Abehwe be hu sede ne hu sitie. Onu tutu bankran ya. Biara obebe biara no. Oba akokwe sede ne hu sitie. Enti asemi ayasema ahani papa. Bra bi bretre kese bo se na onyini. Nenso abanisa. Enti se waba ba behwe na danfo na se na ade nyina ba behwe na ni achi na obaye no me baye no mahu se bibia da kama sie no kama so mampeni dada JJ Rawlings aye nyina friend Papa J no sie no kama aye abusuan so mase ani me nana no nyina me mamu nyina shedding mamu nyina yakọ ani abusuan nyina mamu nyina yakọ nyame ne de ma eno no asusu na wogie enti metamachi awu bibia mu kakra me kan ne se bibia nya boko asumbie mra odomra akro yemra if you say madam fuma die nyina no ne de wo hwehwa no ne de wo hwehwa no ti di America ne say Papa J Masi Madam Fo kuma omai nyara yenyira ene ye jao kwan fe eta wachi papa eta wachi nyame mfa on sieye on fa okra sieye
Sana otumfo nsi anamu ayabe ma safu churuboko dia kuma woman hene otumfo anu disem a ode soma no na ode atidwa no nia otumfo e kan se nase ninua libibia anene omampani dada odahoi na onka ne bibia mu se ebiana omampani dada abakumase na obedi ne dwuma bi de odi kai kwachia otumfo na obusa ne sane ne hote ansa na dwuma de bia ade ne nam no wakọ na wakotoa so anopa ho a akwasida titiru ohye daba bani otumfo edi ade ene abane seya otumfoɔ sɛ ɔma yɛn nyinaa yadeɛ nyinaa papa gye damri fa due ne amanehunu da mo ase
ɛna aba no Asanteman wura sɛ ɔhwɛ som a nase yi asom Ghana man a ɛno ho ti ɛna watu ɔno ne man hene a ɔwɔ kumawu sɛ ɔmfa n'anum asɛm mmra ɔma abusua yɛ akɔ sɛ ba sɛ ɔsom a kwaside biara former president ɔwɔ hɔ ama ebire bi atwam ɛyɛ 2010 ɔma ne title bi wagye odin onibdenti a ɔde saa title no ma no ampa sɛ ɔba Ghana ha no wabɛbɔ adwuma a ɛsɛ wɔyɛ na ɔde gye ne din nti yɛwura sɛ ɔma abusua yɛ akɔ ɔka mo ho ɔno so ɔka abusua no ho nti wɔwɔ ha papa yɛ abae deɛ ɔno amu ɛwɔ mo ntam ha sei nti ɔma mo yɛ akɔ a ɛtwa to wɔ koraa yɛnya nwieyɛ sɛ ɔhene bi wɔ ha na sɛ wo so wɔ adesiedi a ɛkwan da hɔ wobɛtumi aba ɛfiri saa berɛ yi a kɔpem na ɔnan ne fa yɛgye adesiedeɛ ne ayɛ amammerɛ ka ho ɛda mo ase kete
nso akasa kakra ame se me hu se me kira ha e ma mpanyini dada Rawlings ato ne betin ya santoa aya no kra amampanyini dada de akire ba krono ya fra no krono streso timpom ya santoa wonti na me gina ho baabi a wona na de akoma santomai baabi o dwane ko hye no ana akueche wa ampem asanto wa dwane beto a me na che wa ampem ampa enokre amampanyin dada de akire ba hwe se sade oba panyine ya santo wa atimako ama asantema na kire se ne kokoyetu anento oto ne bedini ya santo wa na se wodi akire be hwe se ai fampo na ne bai na na edwane ko hye ampa obatom na na pemchewa enenti oba panye ya santoa he se wugina ha ona na chewa ampemchewa mbra ona na dwane ye akoma santeman no me na odwane betwa me na na ampemchewa anenti se me gina ha oba panye ya santoa nti na me gina ha ya ona na Agyapade o mo ye se me behwe o papa achi amba ma wo yakọ anti se wo nsa me sa na me free asantemamu kura ye frɛ no sraso timpom ya me se mo betinka a check akra mampanyi fa na sojafo ba e be hwe ampa wo hu ba bia ya santoa di akon na oba ne ho adwa no me na chewa e na odwa ne beto enti ne nchai na wowo e na mrofo ne befa no koy enti ya santoa e se wo gina wasantini ba na me gina hai e frenka ye panyini enso anam se me na nanom kodo ho nti omoka kro ne frɛ no sraso timpo awona na tanto ya santoa ejone ya obehye enti me to me na me ba ha aba panye ya santoa ya ko ono ma me ne wabusua nyina e mam yakọ se de papa di eni die mu na odo wonti oba ya damiri fa o damiri fa due orade nka mo wate na on shamode etwa se basa efisa sase so nye tena bia ayeda na ye bekọ ento oba panye ya santoa ye bigina ha sere me kasa sie no eda masse ama mo mpanimfo ana otumfo abedi akire ana otire nkwawae dunya micha wo kwa nya memfa wonko onfa wonko droso wiem ento mo te se bigina ha na asante man sraso timpo mu amesa ai papa so odi o mampanyina chi asajafo amanse mbote ne nka atafosu obesie ne msa mudi na chi ba e ma munyina hyede oba banye ya santoa onti na bigina awrade nka wate na won hye no ma mede we na mesre e dia kasa kakra we da masi
yo oba fani ya da wase ya santoa
Sabre yede amamre dwumadie no ekọ na wieye no nan ne fa pepepe ese omo ya amamre twato na yekata adaka ne so na ye start free hako ansa na bepeja ne mo no omanhene bepeja ne mo no mefa fidie so atomensa afre Dr. Honorable Zeneto na wabegyina ne nua ne abusua no nyina na mo de asedaka sie ama yewura wote kokọ so asante mawura ne omanhena otu no se omesi nanan no mfa nanum asem emre omampanyi dada agewodin na busua Honorable Doctor.
Yo nana meda wasipi na mejina ebusiafo nyina nemu eda otumfo ase owo nyonyama odi ahyen papa yo mampeni dada Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings na na de kasa no yankasa pi yenim yenta yaba yebeda sevium yeah.
Yo yade nyina kuma woman hene nana enche obepeja ne mu ntimu so osore na obi asore ani die kwaso ebisa ha wo no wogina asanteman ewura ani mo nyam ne tume so sabre na na sore obeba beche
by the Asantehene. And so that was Otumfuo's representative, led by Berima Safo Chunipo Akodua, the Pumahuhene. And we also had Manafri Fayamwa, who was with him as well. So that was an absolutely fantastic display of rich Ghanaian tradition and culture, music, drumming, and dancing. And basically, these were the in-laws of the President Rawlings coming to pay their respects and ordered to come and represent the Otumfuo Asantehene. Which brings us to the end of today's events, which is day 3 of the funeral of Flight Lieutenant J.J. Rawlings. Lieutenant Tay, what can we look forward to tomorrow, day 4, which is the final day?
Yes. Tomorrow, the funeral will take place at the Black Star Square. We should expect the day to start at 8 a.m., where we'll have the filing pass between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. We should have the filing pass by the family, the CDS, the Chief of the Defense Staff, the IGP and heads of security agencies, the former chairman of the Council of State, the Chief of Staff, the Chief Justice, the Speaker of Parliament, former President John Agyapong Kufuor and his spouse, the former President John Dramani Mahama and his spouse. We'll also see the Vice President of the Republic and the Second Lady, visiting heads of state, the President of the Republic and the First Lady, and the clergy. The burial service itself should be expected to start at 9:10 a.m. Following that, we'll have the procession of the body from the Independence Square or the Black Star Square to the military cemetery. Now, as mentioned before, the procession will pass through some principal streets in Accra when it leaves the Independence Square. We should see it pass through the Osu Castle Road, hit the Ridge Roundabout, proceed on to the Kojo Thompson Road at Abraka, then on to Circle, Nima Police Station, the Gifford 37 Road, down on to Bema Camp, travel onto the Mahama Road, hit the roundabout there, and finally proceed to the military cemetery for interment. Now, we urge the general public to watch the burial service virtually as much as possible, and then kindly step out of your homes where the procession will pass, and be mindful of the soldiers lining the streets as a mark of respect to the late former president. Please, you are also reminded to keep your mask on throughout, and then be mindful of social distancing and the COVID protocols as much as possible. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much again for your attention, Lieutenant Judy Nunate. With me, my name is Gabriel Asante Busopim, and I have run this morning the day's activities with Captain Edward Senanu Akako. Then, as usual, Lieutenant Judy Nunate and Kafuide, a broadcaster. So same time, we'll meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. with saying, stay healthy, protect yourself, wear your mask, avoid any arrest by the police, so that you can be part of the funeral of the former president, Jerry John Rawlings. Good night and bye-bye.
personal grief.